What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're talking about what we know about Final Fantasy XIV and the next generation. A lot of this is going to tie into also kind of some talks around PS5 price, Xbox Series S, X, Nintendo Switch Pro rumors. So this is a console, conversation as well as a Final Fantasy XIV as it relates to those consoles itself. So Chris, right before we hit record, we were talking about price. And go ahead and let's dive in on price because we're still waiting for the PS5 price. And I'd like to get your reaction to the Xbox Series X and S prices as well.
I think the Xbox price is priced perfectly. You've got a $500 entry point. You've got a $300 entry point for people without 4K TVs, which if you're concerned about that other $200, you probably don't have an overly expensive TV, or you don't care if your console can play at the max res on your TV. And then all the old Xboxes will be basically supported. So whatever price those drop down to, whatever happens in the pre-owned market, there's a whole spectrum of prices up to and capped at $500.
$500 seems to be the acceptable market price.
That's the most somebody's willing to pay. People start to balk when it goes above that. iPhones hitting $1,000 made everybody uncomfortable. So even at $700, it made everybody uncomfortable. So it just... $500 seems to be that point where beyond that, people start to say,
"I'll wait.
Is this important?" Which is not a question that somebody selling game hardware wants you to ask. They kind of want you to just go, "Yeah, I want it. That's good enough."
Yeah.
And 500 seems to be the most that the market will bear.
So you think PS5 is going to actually come in at that price as well?
I do, and I don't think one was waiting for the other to announce. We'll just change our plan. I think they both knew it was going to be 500.
Oh, I disagree. I disagree. There were two PlayStation 4 presentations, and when Microsoft leaned in with Kinect, when they went in at $500, PlayStation was like, well, hello. And at first, everybody was like, PlayStation sold it like, no, we didn't do that. And then years later, they're like, yeah, we're watching each other. And because the market is going to respond.
You think they have 2 or 3 prices that they're ready to go with?
Yeah, absolutely. They have 2 or 3 prices based off of where they're positioned. The other factor in price, and I know we'll get into the conversation with 14 here just a second, but the other factor with price is this year is so unpredictable. When you do your business speculation and costs, and here's the parts, and then all of a sudden a pandemic hits, and now you can't maybe get that part at that price because manufacturing has slowed down. All of this has been impacted. All of this is up in the air, and they're trying to figure this out. Now I think, and I do believe you're correct, that I think PlayStation 5 comes in probably at $500 for the one with the disc drive. And if they are really aggressive, they already have and announced the all digital model, which I think is a genius idea. I was like, perfect, I don't need another Blu-ray player, I've got that covered. Yeah, and if they could come in at oh my gosh, $400 on the all digital, or even if they even with pricing and stuff like that, came in at $450 for just save me $50, I'm in. That sounds like a perfect reasonable expectation.
Yeah. And especially now that we don't expect backward compatibility, right? The loss of the disc drive is really admitting that we're never do you know what I'm saying?
Okay, I get you. From
about a disc
backwards
drive, I own discs.
Yeah, I got you.
Games, and so buying a console that doesn't have a disc drive is just admitting, oh, this was never intended to play those games. Whether or not it does, there's just something in my mind, and maybe that's just a stupid connection I make, that if it doesn't have a disc drive, it's not like previous consoles. And in my mind, I connect each generation to previous generations because they have similar things.
Similar style media.
I have trouble connecting Nintendo consoles
from N64 to
because
GameCube.
each one stands on its own in its delivery method, as opposed to Xboxes feel really connected. PlayStations feel really connected. And that disc drive is one of those things that in my mind is it's the same thing. And dropping to all digital models starts to make it feel a lot more like an Apple TV. It makes it feel a lot more like just a box that I'm just plugging in.
The strength of it, though, but the strength of the all digital model and the PlayStation 5 model itself is the architecture is so similar. We're not sitting here going from Cell to x86 and then to some other Power PC, where they've already announced thousands of their titles are going to be backwards compatible. What Yoshi P has kind of talked about it is that Yoshi P, and just for everybody's knowledge, and I want to talk about Nintendo and Xbox here just in a second, but kind of touch on what we know, what Yoshi P said about the PS5. He's always been coy about it, but he's coy because it's a marketing strategy. It's really out of his hands to come and make that announcement. They want to make that announcement and have the biggest impact, where like sources like IGN, who don't actively follow the game, sources like, you know, Kotaku is like, oh, did you know Final Fantasy XIV is coming to PS5? Now, I would say that if it's not ready, because we've all been impacted this year, like this year kind of throws all kinds of things up in the air. I could easily expect them to say, hey, it's backwards compatible, so you can get your PS5 and you can start playing the game. And essentially, because it's already enhanced for PS4 Pro, I would bet that they say, hey, yeah, it's gonna run great in backwards compatibility mode. And then what we saw last time when we went from PS3 to PS4, it was a couple of months. So when PS4 launched, I think it was like 3 or 4 months before they were like, and now here's the PS4 version.
I think it was like a year that you had a free upgrade.
Oh, and you had a whole year to do that.
It was a year to do the free upgrade, because I didn't buy my PS4 right away. I got it a couple months late, and it was fine. Like, I just went and hit the upgrade button, and I think it said like, hey, you can't go back on this or something.
Right. It's a one-way upgrade for free for your license.
It upgrades you. So I think for people that are on the fence about PS5, maybe they want to get into 14 now, they could go get the PS3 version for their free trial, start playing to forever.
PS3?
PS4 version, excuse me.
No, it's okay.
They can get the current old stuff and play it, and then if they want to buy, then they can buy, and I assume there's going to be an upgrade. So if they end up buying the 4 and then they wait for the 5s, because maybe the 5s are sold out, I assume the new consoles will sell out this year, because everybody's still going to be at home.
I would say that no matter like what, we don't have pre-order information.
They're hard to manufacture, and everybody has disposable money that they want to spend on entertaining themselves at home if they're employed, which they don't sell enough to sell to everybody. So the 40 million unemployed people in the U.S. is not their target. It's the other 270 million people.
So for y'all's knowledge, we do not yet have a release date on or a pre-order date for PS5, but we've been told by multiple sources that is coming soon. It was speculated that just yesterday the PS4 or 5, geez Louise, price, you got 3, I went 4, and we're talking about PS5 here. So, we'll try to keep you guys up to date. Just if you guys are part of the Discord, just note, as soon as that information hits, we'll try to put a community post here on the channel and also in Discord, so that if you're interested and trying to get in line and getting your hands on with a console, as soon as you can, hopefully we can help make that happen as soon as we find out. Now, outside of the PlayStation ecosystem, it's, been confirmed last year, that it's going to come to Xbox. But before we talk about that, because just to jump in on it for anybody who doesn't know, we've had several sources that have told us that the original plan was to announce it at the North American Fan Fest, which feels like an appropriate place, especially since Xbox is more prevalent in North America as opposed to Europe, and especially as opposed to Japan.
Phil Spencer in the back door.
Well, it's not that far for him to go to Vegas.
Spencer?
It's like, wait, I think that's Phil. Anyway, that'd
be so exciting.
That would be really exciting. Anyway, it's funny because no matter when I talk about like Phil Spencer in a positive light, somebody was like, he lied. They said VR was coming to Xbox. Okay, all right. Well, it's not here yet. Well, things change, but like in the grand scheme of time, he didn't put a time frame on it, like 2 weeks from now. Anyway, on the Xbox side of it, we've been told by several sources it's been running actually since last year on the Xbox One, but that does not confirm that it is in fact heading to the Xbox One. I think they're going to continue to support PS4. Xbox One, from Microsoft's philosophy of you don't have to upgrade. Honestly, you've told me this privately numerous times. Chris, are you getting an Xbox this year?
No.
Why? Why would you get an Xbox this year?
Why would I get an Xbox? Why would I get? I mean, I'm a contract employee. My current contract expires on the 18th, so I am unemployed. Like, we're recording this on the 10th. I am unemployed 8 days from now. Mm-hmm. So already spending $500 on something is something that, like, this year, the kind of work I do it's going to be really sketch. How many months of the remaining year I'm going to be able to have employment? So spending $500 is already something that's like, okay, is this important? Well, an Xbox is important to me, so I would find a way if it was really important. Don't have a 4K TV. I have an X, so it runs great. It's basically still, it feels new. What is it going to do for me? What does it do? It doesn't open up any new titles to me that won't run on my console.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't run quieter. It's smaller. I don't care. Like it just takes $500 out of my pocket to run games in the same way on the same TV. Maybe I get a touch faster load time. Outside of Destiny, I don't find that a problem.
Right. Outside of Destiny,
Destiny's the only problem.
It's so funny because I've been saying this, and I've seen people start to tweet it, but I said it like a month ago. I go, guys, I think Destiny's Xbox's killer app this year. It's in Game Pass on the 22nd, 60 frames, and the loading times. I think people are going to see a massive difference because when you play on PC with an SSD or on Stadia, like you're like, oh, this is great. I'm in, I'm playing, I'm having fun, and I go to Xbox, I'm like, I might as well make a snack. Oh, and the snack turned into lunch. Like, it's just abysmal. Anyway, this isn't a Destiny conversation.
And there is that you don't, like, you're not going to be able to separate the two. So publicly, like, yeah, they may have these amazing load times on the 10% of the Xbox population that makes the jump.
Mm-hmm.
90% are going to be on Reddit going, this is dumb.
Yeah, we're still waiting around.
They've got to find a way to increase those load times. I don't know if they're throttling the X to maybe keep it up with the ones, if they were just having one version, and
Mm-hmm.
if there's anything they can do to optimize for the existing consoles, they have to. But speaking of 14
Yeah.
and load times, what do you think it's going to run like on the Xbox?
I think it's going to run just like you would see right now with the PlayStation 4.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at the Xbox One and the Xbox One X, because that's something you have, within the PlayStation 4 Pro, you have the ability to kind of, just like with that mid-tier generation, they have the ability to output. And with the X, like being able to output in 4K while you don't have a 4K TV, I've always prioritized frame rate over resolution. Like, frame rate is the most important thing, and to be able to have a better, more smoother experience, a faster load time, just like that experience, I think overall impacts 14 in a great way. Now, it runs great on PlayStation. I would expect, because of its PC architecture, the fact that it is a Windows, it runs on Windows, Xbox runs Windows, like it's a natural transition, and it would seem very strange to me. I think it would be very against what Microsoft wants, and I'm very curious as to you guys' thoughts, because like often you see console limitations being kind of a spouted thing of why 14 can't do X. And honestly, I'm working on a video talking about 14's technical debt, because I know, as somebody who knows and lives in that industry, I can confuse people when I talk about like what does that mean. So keep it locked over on Ginger Prime for a future video on that as an explanation. But when it comes down to this, it would seem so weird to be just like, oh, it's only on Series X. Like, we're only going to let you have to upgrade to this Xbox to be able to play 14, when PS3 assets, and I'm meaning PS3 assets, still exist in the game, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any time that they're going to remove those in the near future.
Them slowly.
Well, yeah.
Right? They fixed the limbs of melting.
They've also redone the Chocobo. You can now fly. Like, they are working on these things. It just takes a long time, and hence I think that's where technical debt definition has
PS4 is not the current limitation. So even as we talk about
No.
dropping PS4 support, that's not what moves the needle forward.
Right.
You're only as fast as your slowest runner, and the slowest runner right now is the min spec PC needs to be increased. And so I think when they move out to whatever generation of Xbox they support and the PS5, what happens to the PC min spec? Because as of now, that's the slowest runner. Not PC players as a whole, but the fact that they support so far down the PC hardware list.
It's really quite impressive, the range in which that you can take part in this game from console and PC, and that's kind of bringing back, as we said, Phil Spencer already confirmed this last year, and we've been just waiting and waiting for, like, is there a date? Is it going to happen with 6.0? Is it going to happen with 5.0? Like, all of this is still up in the air, and we'll be sure to give you guys probably a tear-filled, at least from my perspective, when it happens. It's finally
I'll feel it immediately because I play on near min spec as far as just maximizing my frame rate. I keep my setting dialed down so low that when they make those moves, I do see like a minor increase. But every once in a while, like when you and I first tried out cloud gaming, I just said, okay, well, it's not my hardware. Let's just see what it can do. And like I scaled that all the way up. It's playing a different game.
Yeah.
Like the range that 14 can look like, the way I play, and like what happens if you slide everything to the right. It's a totally different game.
So
it's beautiful.
So let's talk about range now. And we've teased it a little bit. Nintendo is kind of they are crushing it in terms of sales. Like, they've had up, when you talk about the pandemic, You can't get one. They're so hard to find, and we've had
Many people
ours.
are negatively impacted by this pandemic. Many people are going through, but for everybody that's not, there is a push to acquire something to keep kids occupied, something to do in their downtime that keeps them inside the home.
Mm-hmm.
So Switch is like, my sister-in-law called me. They don't play games. When I bring my Switch into the house, they ask me not to play it so much in front of the kids because they don't want kids thinking that's a normal thing. That's a focus of theirs, is not having kids sit in front of screen time. She called me up. She's like, how do I get one of these Switches? And when I do, how do I set it up? And like, what are my options? And do I need more than one game? Like, just questions that they just don't know because they're not gaming people. And it's like, yeah, here's the games you need. Here's what you need to play. Here's what we can send you because we have stuff to spare. And she couldn't find one. That's what they wanted to spend their stimulus check, part of it on. They wanted to spend half of it on kind of setting aside for their to keep them safe, and the other half is, well, we already kind of budget for if one of us lost our jobs, so let's do the other half. Let's do something fun for the kids to play with. And that's not the issue. It's kind of like 14 housing.
Yeah.
You spend the money, and then you get the money, and you realize,
there's not somebody selling. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, actually, that was one of the.
Just go buy one.
In our last video that we posted, that was one of the top, people who really want us to talk about housing. So guys, just let us know. We're gonna keep pumping out these discussion topics. We've actually, Chris ordered a wheel, so we talked about it, so we can spin the wheel, see what we're gonna talk about in the next video.
I did. I ordered a wheel at 9 in the morning, and I got a call from the guy that heads up my contract at 10 in the morning saying, your last paycheck's on the 18th. But my wheel arrives in 5 days.
Yeah.
And we're going to get our money's worth out of this thing.
We're going to spin that wheel.
We're going to spin it forever.
But you might not know this, Chris, but it's like, so rumor time, guys, especially as it relates to Nintendo, is that it's been rumored that Nintendo has been asking their third parties to get their games 4K ready. And so from that perspective, I always joke, it's like every year in January since the Switch came out, it's almost a requirement for YouTubers to talk about the Switch Pro. Is this the year of the Switch Pro? And so if this rumor proves to be true, 4K shouldn't be.
Steel can resist a forklift, has a USB port and an Ethernet port
built in. So, well, let's just play in the sandbox here for a minute, because if, let's say, they did release a Switch that was 4K capable, that would put it on par with, as my voice cracks, with obviously a Xbox.
You're spouting crap. There is not going to be a 4K Switch this January.
I don't think it's going to be this January. I'm just saying.
Bet of all time, and it's the kind of bet that I would love to lose.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I would love somebody to go back and go, "You're wrong. There is a 4K Switch." Great, then I'm in a better world that I never thought would exist. I cannot lose this.
My dad and brother.
Switch.
My dad and brother did an interesting bet. They said gas will never get below, this was back when gas was $3 or $4 a gallon, and they're like, my dad's like, oh yeah, with markets and stuff, we'll see gas actually get back below $1.50. And my brother was like, no. And they picked a date. They said if it doesn't happen by X date, one of us is going to owe each other a tank of gas. And then later I asked my brother, he won. My brother won, so my dad filled him up, his truck up with a tank of gas because he won this bet. And my brother said, if gas did get below $1.50, what's that, $20 that I just have to, as opposed to didn't, and my dad had to spend $60 to fill up my truck, so I was like, well, that's actually that's a pretty safe bet. Absolutely.
So I really liked this. We're really devolving here, so we'll probably have to wrap this up.
Yeah.
So I really liked this girl in college, and your brother and I were roommates. That's how we know each other. Just for anybody new in here, Brian and I know each other through his brother,
the Yeti.
And I really wanted to ask her out, and he's like, dude, there's no way she's gonna say yes. And I was like, I don't think she is. And we were so broke at the time. We were so broke. We worked at the soup kitchen so we could take the extra food home. We were so broke. And he said, I will buy you a steak dinner out at a place if she says yes, because I'm so sure that she's going to be like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, okay, well, or she says, whichever way. And I was like, if she says no, and like, I will buy you, I bet you she will. And so that was the bet. And so in my mind, either I got this date with this girl I really liked,
or steak dinner.
And so like, it's like, okay, that makes this whole thing much more like tolerable, that like, at least I'm going to go out and I was like, and I'm going to want beer with that steak. And he's like, you got it. And I was like, okay, we're going to have this amazing like coping dinner when I get like shot down hard, or we're going to like celebrate that, you know, this all worked out. And she told me, you know, you seem great, but I'm kind of wanting to see if there's anybody else that I could date. And if there isn't, then I'll date you. Which is, I was like, at like a spare tire? And she goes, I guess I wouldn't have said it like that. And then she leaned in for a hug, but she leaned in like this. And with this hand out, I shook it and I turned around and I walked off. And I walked in the door and Brandon goes, getting my steak dinner? I was like, yeah, you are. And you're paying. So I know that was like a weird way to devolve from. So your brother has a tendency of picking bets that he feels he can't lose. So I would love to know what he thinks of the 4K Switch.
Yeah,
but if it was a 4K Switch, you think, to get back on topic, it would come to the Switch?
Oh, absolutely. I think it would come to the Switch. It would not. I couldn't understand how it wouldn't if it was running on PS4, on Xbox, if the Switch was capable of outputting that. I would think that the Pro model, my personal wish, would be just something that hooks up into my TV. I've got the handheld. Give me the one that just plugs into the TV. I don't need to be docking any of that. Make it powerful. Let me play these games, and then let the Switch handle when I switch to the handheld version. Especially the way that these things are selling like hotcakes. Like, yeah, you got money, Nintendo. Let's go. Let's put out something that can do 4K. They're always kind of a generation behind, so like, it's just interesting to see, like, if they do decide to step into that arena, what would that even look like? So that's what we guys know. Like, I know typically people look at the Switch and say, why would you want to limit the game? Because the existing Switch, you know, could run 14, especially based off of the PC specs. But the question is that will they continue to increase those specs? And you wouldn't want to see them add it to Switch only to take it away like a year later or an expansion later. And that's the limiting factor in that world.
Is that they're committing to submitting it to being on future Nintendo platforms, and you don't know. I mean, the Nintendo's next platform could be hand powered on a piece of cardboard. Like, you literally don't
they
know.
have a cardboard little game.
Yeah, because they're always doing something crazy. Like, what happens when you're on the Switch U and you're like, well, that was a crappy console.
Yeah. And then the final thought, because if they brought it into the cloud, because PSO2 runs on Switch, but it runs in a cloud instance within Japan, because Japan is smaller, like, they're able to do those kind of things much easier. Here in the United States, that's still going to be like there's still a roadmap, a process that's going to take, because I know we've got our friend Sparta, he's out in Georgia, and his internet is just abysmal. Like, it's just like, he tells me the speed.
Shadow PC, right?
And same thing with Shadow PC. But I would hope that we'll see that with the relationship building between Google and Square as well, where they're getting all their latest, that we'd actually see Stadia actually support Final Fantasy XIV, because that would be just another, I think, really good option with the game itself. Just because I like Stadia, like, it works great. It doesn't work for you because, interestingly enough, you're on a Mac, and Mac users seem to have a hard issue with this with the platform.
That's weird.
What a strange concept.
I'm sure that there's so much just blood, sweat, and tears into fixing that.
Just all like we got to get this fixed, guys. For Google,
we're both just gonna cry in our separate giant pools of money about the way we can't get along.
It's gonna be fun. Anyway, guys, that's what we know about next generation. As soon as more news comes, the biggest kind of like thing that I guess we're saving for the end of this video, TGS 2020 has announced Square Enix is obviously going to be a part of this digital showcase. Final Fantasy XVI has been rumored for a long time, and that hasn't been showed off. That was originally planned to be shown off at the PlayStation event. I'm guessing that it wasn't either ready or something, like, who knows.
What's defined as ready?
I would say
about it at this point.
I don't want to know if it's 2 years away. Like, if it's got to be under 2 years till release. None of this 10-year, like, we're working on it.
No, 2025.
When they announced the Final Fantasy VII remake, and we'll wrap up, guys, but when they announced the Final Fantasy VII remake, it was like 5 years, and I was like, but at the time back in 2015, I saw that and I go, oh, that looks like a good 2020 game. Because that's just what it's been. It's like they get excited and they announce, and then it's like, and then we have to keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and hopefully we can avoid that. All right, guys, thanks so much. Let us know if you have any questions in the comments below. Again, hit up Discord or keep it locked on a community tab as soon as we know more about the PS5 prices and pre-orders, so that we can share that information. And yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for Work to Game. My name is Brian.
Name's Chris.
Appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you soon. This video is sponsored by me, Ginger Prime. Hopefully you'll check out my podcast channel, Ginger Gaming Radio, which we have lots of guests, lots of great conversations, and even more highlights. Links are in the description below. Let me know what you think. Thanks.